opening statement and just share just a little introduction to this event. Women human rights defenders and human rights defenders as game changers, making use of pioneering tools to promote change. A discussion with women human rights defenders and LGBTIQ human rights defenders on the risks, realities, and opportunities posed by technological change and innovation. So, yeah, so since the dawn of the internet and the prevalence of smartphones and the near global dominance of digital technology, social media, and other now commonplace technological resources and tools, we have seen an almost direct translation of dominant patriarchal structures that shape our physical worlds into our digital worlds. The digital sphere has become another space where women and LGBTIQ persons are subject to violence, degradation, indignities, targeting, and the diminishing of their roles and their contributions to society. This is creating a paradoxical situation for women and gender diverse people, as the digital innovations have provided platforms and space to seek refuge for their own expression, for their work, to counter their narratives, to counter negative narratives, and to advance solidarity movements and other forms of resistance and liberation. This push and pull of the deeply entrenched and problematic use of digital spaces and tools and the opportunities they present persists and continues to shape how we engage and are engaged with in digital spaces. And this is a reality that will persist as long as the dominance of the patriarchy persists, and as long as it continues to fuel and promote the ever-increasing digital divide with laws, policies, and practices that impact accessibility, education, digital literacy, and other opportunities for women and LGBTIQ persons worldwide. So today, as I've mentioned, we have the privilege and the honor to have this incredible group of experienced, courageous, and inspiring human rights defenders with us to share from their firsthand experience on the front lines, from their work and their struggles for gender equality and liberation and to eliminate gender-based violence. So we're going to start with your own introductions, and we'll start with Michelle Jung, and then we'll move it down. Is that okay?
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. This is Roshan Mashal. I'm a woman human rights activist from Afghanistan. I worked in Afghanistan since 1996. And right now, I evacuated on August 2021 from Afghanistan to US because the Taliban took over Afghanistan and we were at high risk. Right now, I am working as a fellow and visiting scholar in the University of Texas at Arlington, and continuing my advocacy and activism work because of women's and girls that are left behind in my country and all over the world. Thank you.
Nora, so would you like to introduce?
Hello, everyone. This is Noura Jizawi. I'm originally from Syria. It's a great coincidence that today is the 12th anniversary of the Syrian uprising that brought us to, as Syrian women, to a huge, major change in our lives and the meanings of activism. However, that moment changed my life personally, and unfortunately, I had to go to exile and change the events of my activism. Speaking of which, everything is related to technology. I'm currently a resident of Canada. I am a senior researcher at the Lab, University of Toronto. My research focuses on the intersection of global security, digital security, and human rights, with a specific focus on digital transnational repression, digital threat targeting, activists in exile, and specifically focusing on the gender dimensions of the digital threats. We're a pleasure to be here with every inspiring person on this panel. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's still in the morning. My name is Suda Rad. I was born in Iran and I'm Iranian, only French since a couple of years, not even a couple of years, so I'm Iranian French. Non-binary, eco-queer feminist. Of course. For at least third of my life, I've experienced life as an immigrant, and that has brought me to use internet as the oxygen for my survival, but also connection with my back home, let's say, community. I don't even know where home is other than one's heart. But it also brought me to activism as a cyber activist, and then it also brought me to be the voice of the voiceless people and also giving them the voice through internet. I'm very much, of course, connected with the both feminist, women, queer as an umbrella term, communities in Iran and Afghanistan. Everybody who speaks Persian, and I always say our audience in Spectrum, the NGO that we launched in France, is anybody who speaks Persian or understands Persian as of age of 3, because before that it's hard for us to communicate with them. But yeah, this is quite me, and I think I will develop further, and I'm more than honored to be here with you.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Hayat Mashad. I'm a feminist activist from Lebanon and a journalist specialized in covering feminist and women's rights issues. And I'm glad to be here. Currently, I'm executive director of a feminist collective called Female. It works in Lebanon and in the region. And we are partners with RAFTO since around 3 years, where we coordinate mainly on everything related to production of feminist knowledge, because we at Female, we believe we focus on feminist movement building on national and regional level, and we believe that knowledge is the first, if I can say, step to be engaged in the movement in a way or another. And that's why we use a lot of digital platforms and online activism, because nowadays we cannot speak about the feminist movement outside the online space in a way or another. So I'm excited and happy to share my experience here. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And I'll just also mention that we're supposed to be joined by Dr. Khurnud Khatib, who was unable to join us today. She was not able to secure a visa, which we recognize and acknowledge as one of the main issues with attending CSW and having CSW in New York. So she is greatly missed. I encourage everyone to look her up and her amazing work. The bio is on the event page on Facebook. And for those in person, we have the bios scattered around. So please read more about her. So, okay, ladies and people, let's get started. I just wanted to start us off with an easy question. Each of you here are bringing very unique, rich, and deep experiences with using online tools, building online tools and platforms for women and LGBTIQ persons, bringing them vital information about their rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality, and that their identity and existence isn't an anomaly, or they're not existing in isolation with these issues. Can each of you please share more about this? What took you from seeing the need to build these or utilize these tools to the impact with the people you've been able to reach? And what are some unexpected lessons you've learned along the way about how women and LGBTIQ persons access and use online spaces? So it's a big question, but I think you're ready.
That's only the easy part.
Yeah. Whoever would like to go first.
You want to go first? Oh. Okay. Well, I think I don't want to repeat the obvious, but sometimes just to set the ground and set the tone. About we're going to talk about the challenges and the opportunities which are going to come. But as in my introduction, as I said, internet has become the tool for me and my fellow activists to be able to stay connected to the community that we want to really see the impact coming from. And also to empower them to be able to confront the huge propaganda which is coming from the system. And when I say system, it's both the government, the regime, the ideology, the religious and traditional practices, etc., etc. Well, that becomes a must. At the same time, we do realize that in this community, and when I say this, it means, let's say the Afghan and the Iranian community are living still inside the country and not still being challenged by the immigration yet. They have Afghan immigrants in Iran, which are subject to another, unfortunately, shameful and really like intersectional discriminations by the state and also the population. Anyhow, in that case, it brings us to be able to connect with only part of the community which can have access to internet, which is able to use internet as a tool of awareness raising and also learn, go farther beyond the bubble that they're living in. And then this is the easy part, actually. The hard part is to make this impacts in a way that they're empowered enough so they can become the agents of the awareness raising themselves. So they can become aware enough to be able to bring the impacts beyond the internet. So we're talking about these communities where sexuality or gender identity, everything is so capitalistic and also hetero, cis-normative, empowered every day by education, by the politics, by lacking and not existing freedom of expression, and so on and so on. So anything that you see on the news, it's really the very obvious surface of what is happening in these regions. I want to keep it short.
Yes, I think that maybe because, as mentioned in the beginning, we work a lot on movement building. I believe, as mentioned, that today we cannot speak about this movement outside the internet. And after the Arab Spring in our region, we have noticed the importance of digital platforms and mobilizing people and sensitizing them around the topics. And I think that since then, a lot of feminist groups and organizations realized the importance of being present online, because unfortunately, we always feel that we are pushed away from certain spaces in the offline world in a way or another. And we don't want this to happen with us online as well, although it is happening in a way or another. And maybe we can speak more during the session about the types of violence that are happening online. So I think that one of the main reasons why we are online, what tools we use, is that we want to make sure that we are reclaiming this space and reclaiming it to be safe, to be accessible for women and girls and marginalized individuals. So the main work that we do mainly is continue the mobilization and the movement building online in a way or another, increase the awareness and the engagement on topics related to feminist issues, gender issues, SRHR topics, etc. Also, one of the new things that we do online is that we work on monitoring and exposing the gender inequality, because as mentioned by Soda, the majority of the speech online is homophobic, sexist, racist, etc. So it is important to ensure that we are promoting another voice. And one of the most important things of our presence digitally is the collective work, and the networking and the solidarity we create online, especially that we know that in our regions we have different similarities.
Thank you so much. I experienced that I can say that that using of digital resources and tools is a new form of activism. Then in the situation that we are like in Afghanistan, and I can focus on last 2 years that Taliban took over Afghanistan, and there is no space physically to women gathering together to raise their voices, to do advocacy and other works to for their rights and for the gender equality. The only thing that we used in these 2 years, it was to keep our connection with the women's and girls inside of Afghanistan. And without the using of digital tools, it was not possible. And as well as we know that activism looking for a change. and the change needs advocacy. The digital tools will facilitate all the process of the advocacy, like mobilizing the people to creating your common goal, and also raising your voice, and also making your allies manage your time, and mobilizing the financial and human resources. That's all these things are very easy, and it will be good facilitation by digital tools. And the experience in Afghanistan, we used the digital tools during these two years to amplify the voice of women from inside of Afghanistan, to bring the reality from inside of Afghanistan to the world, to connect women from the inside of Afghanistan to the international community, create solidarity and also community building that it was not possible physically inside of Afghanistan. And as usual and always, we also used this platform for raising awareness, and also for education, to learn and also keep updated ourselves. So these all things, we used the different tools of digital tools like Zoom, WhatsApp, Twitter, and everything of the social media pages, and these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much. Honestly, I feel like I have not that much to add, but I will speak precisely from the experiences of the Syrian human rights defenders, specifically the human rights defenders. I can just recall the moments now of like whatever happened, whatever the status of the Syrian people before 2011. Back then, the authoritarian regime was controlling even the flow of information that the people were consuming, or whatever, even had access to information, access to knowledge. Everything was controlled by the state, since back then the internet was censored and not that much popular among the people. The 2011, or even like the Arab Spring, changed the perception of the population towards the internet, and people started looking at the internet as a tool of liberalization. So the internet was given to us is under, like, for people under authoritarianism, where even crossing borders was something like a dream for many people, not only because of the economic situation, but also because the vast majority of activists were on travel ban. Being on internet, on safe and free internet, was a dream and was an opening window to see the world and to learn from the world, but also on the other hand to connect with each other. Before being online, like having any meeting to discuss the human rights, the politics, even the social, economic situation in the country, without having the permission of the security forces, was a crime and could lead to the prosecution of the participants in this meeting. So what the internet gave to us, these digital spaces give to us, is space, room to discuss, to learn, to know each other, and to organize our efforts. Besides that, it gives us the opportunity, like once we, like after a couple of months of the uprising, the country became totally disconnected from each other with all of these checkpoints and the dozens of wanted people on these checkpoints. So crossing these checkpoints was not safe. And afterwards, many of these areas where the movement and the protests were super active, these areas became under siege. Again, the internet had a very different use in our life, which is we had access to these people under siege. We had access to their day-to-day life, we had access to victims. So as human rights defenders, we would be able to document the atrocity of the regime and get access to counter even the disinformation and propaganda the authoritarian regime was spreading among the international community and also between the citizens themselves. So we countered and we resisted all means of atrocity and repression in the physical space going to the digital space. And yet, when many of us became, had themselves like, found themselves like they had to cross borders, to be in exile, the internet also gave us the window, gave us the bridges to stay connected, to be able to organize, to mobilize, and also to keep working on the human rights documentation, awareness, and keep involving as activists in exile in the transnational justice efforts and seeking accountability and justice to our country. So these are like some of the basic headlines of what internet did to us, and I really like the very recent tragedy of the earthquake. Also reminded many of the Syrian people how much we can survive using the internet, coming together, having this space to organize our efforts and to work together to aim to rescue our people. I can speak for days how much like the groups online on different platforms were working as bumblebees days and night to help the victims and the people who are still unavailable, waiting for any rescue help. But yeah, it's just end here to give the extra time for the discussion and then from the other people and to talk about the other dark faces of the internet.
I guess I totally forgot one part of your question, and that was a good response to the activism and a good impact on what is happening and digital activism, basically. But first of all, I wanted to just make sure that I have formulated it well enough that no online activism means a big impact or a big change unless there is an offline activism behind it or just creating it. We can just talk about internet and just the hashtag and here or not. But if we do not remember that behind every ID, except for the bots, there is a human and who is actually tweeting or putting some data out, then we cannot really change the world. We're just going to create another parallel planet, kind of. And that is something that the Iranian activists, have to always have in mind, because one, not everybody has access to internet, not everybody has access to a smartphone to be able to use the internet. And two, we are just facing a regime that even before internet was created as a democratic tool for people to communicate, has already started its suppression and oppression. So we have all these intersectional discriminations and also the oppressions and basically the cut of access that starts with filtering the websites. This is just a joke between us. As soon as we launch a new website, we know that it's going to be filtered within the next day. So the first thing we do is just like, if that was filtered, then use the VPN. And Iranians and Afghans know better how to use the VPNs, like misinformation tools, than others. So this is why people think Iranians are super techie savvy. Well, they're not. It's just the way they understand internet works with the VPN, right? And as soon as like you have this websites being filtered and internet being shut down, as soon as there is an internet shutdown, we know that something else is going to happen on the ground. There's going to be a big rally. There's going to be a lot of people who's going to lose their lives, etc. So this is something we should always remember and not kind of glorify the cyber activism and having access to internet. Again, it's only a group of people that we can have impact on. It's only a group of people who understand what we're saying. And if those people cannot actually make a change on the ground, face to face, then we're just uploading ourselves.
I just want to add two other important points that One is that, you know better that, during these almost 2 years that Taliban took over Afghanistan, they just banned schools and universities for women and girls, and we used from the digital resources and tools to provide some education opportunities for women and girls inside of Afghanistan. And it was very helpful during this time. And as well as we used to record and document the violation against human rights and women's rights inside of Afghanistan. As I am right now, I'm working on a project that it is the name of the project is a RAP project that records the women's resilience in the face of injustice and also promote unity and create a guide for change. It will document the woman histories to be a lesson learned for the policymaker and also decision makers, students, researchers, and human rights defenders to they could see that how women are victims of conflict and war, while they don't have any role in creating the war. But they are victims of war. And in Afghanistan, unfortunately, women and girls are victims of peace deal as well, because we had before this change, United States and Taliban signed a peace agreement between each other. But the first victims of this peace deal was women, because more of women and activists, journalists, and women working in high level of government, they just exiled from Afghanistan and they just left the country. And who are left behind inside of a country, they just live as a prisoner in their home, and they just removed and erased women from all aspects of life. So right now, we use these digital tools as a only solution to connect with them, to bring their voice, and to create the international solidarity for supporting women's human rights inside of Afghanistan.
Sorry, on that note, as we are also working with the Afghan community, absolutely, girls and women are subject to gender-based violence from politicians, etc. But then also imagine the case of the LGBTQ people, especially the lesbian, bisexual, and trans women in Afghanistan, who are constantly under oppression and they're not even existing, even on paper. So those are really the hidden layers of the human rights violations. And for us, even it's so hard to have access to them because they have to come out and digital spaces, which are not safe at all. So this, and then we have to bring in some sort of digital literacy to them and just make sure that we're safe. So the challenges when we want to reach out to them is multiplied by, I don't know how many, what number I can use, but always remember there is somebody who's left behind whenever you're talking about a certain community being oppressed or discriminated. Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I think that first question just naturally took us into the next question on challenges and risks and opportunities. But I'm hearing from everyone, and I don't think it's a surprise, but I think it's just a good reminder and good to hear from your firsthand experiences that what is so important is the connection, that you cannot overstate the connection and how that connection between women and LGBTIQ people in spaces like in Iran and Afghanistan, Syria, and Lebanon are so important. And then also access, of course. And then I liked your point, Hayat, on reclaiming your space as well. Because you have these spaces online and they are trolled, they are patrolled, they are just being infiltrated. And you have the opportunity online to have a space that you can't have in person oftentimes. So reclaiming that space and preserving it for your purpose and for women and LGBTQ people is so essential. So I think, you know, we did naturally go into this next question on challenges and risks and opportunities. And Sudha, you already talked about internet filtering, which was I was going to mention is a huge problem when it comes to access to information, especially in these contexts with Iran, Afghanistan, and Syria, where the the governments are filtering out information about LGBTIQ people, feminism, sexual and reproductive health and rights. And so your app, maybe you want to talk about it at some point about how you are getting that information in because of the oppressive regime just filtering out this type of information. And same with you, Nora. But if anyone has any more comments on, we talk about challenges and risks, but maybe opportunities. And Hyatt, I know you also wanted to talk about the gender violence that is experienced online. So maybe you can take us into the risks part of that question.
Yes, exactly, I want first to second Soda on the point that when we speak, of course, on organizing online and on activism online, it's for sure to complement the work that is being done offline, and it's not a standalone strategy, if I can say, but it is an extra tool in the work that we usually do. Speaking about the challenges and the risks, I believe that in addition to the oppression that is practiced by governments against activists who are maybe women human rights defenders or from other gender identities, but also there are special, if I can say, challenges that face mainly women and girls and LGBT communities, so which is related also to the social and cultural norms that also prevent their presence on different occasions online. So it's not an easy thing. Also, we can speak about digital literacy, about the gap of access to the internet among people, and also these are the groups that pay the biggest price and as mentioned are usually left behind. So when speaking about challenges, we are speaking about a big spectrum of challenges. When speaking specifically about online gender-based violence, I can see that what's happening online is replicating what's happening in our offline work. You know, patriarchy is trying to take over also this virtual space that we are trying our best to make it as much as possible, or call for the right of these groups, women, girls, LGBT, other groups to be present and to amplify their voices through these platforms. But this is not easy because it's you can just only go viral online and speak about our causes, and this will expose you to a lot of backlash, attacks, threats online. Here I wanted to mention one of the assessments that we conducted in female in partnership with ICMN. This assessment was conducted 2 years ago, and it targeted frontline women human rights defenders in the WANA region. And there was a set of questions about their experiences and perceptions online. I want to mention just some of the main data. For example, 91% of them mentioned that it is either hard or impossible for them to practice their work or activism without the internet, and this says a lot. And this can be linked to what was mentioned by the colleagues here that about the shrinking in the physical spaces, and that's why we are resorting more to these online spaces. Also, 97% of the respondents said that or reported at least one form of gender discrimination that they experienced online. They spoke about the censorship, they spoke about the threats they are experiencing from governments, but also the threats from their own communities. And this also tells a lot. And we know that the threats are even higher for gender non-conforming people and for women and girls. So they spoke about the fear that is related to their privacy, the surveillance. They feel all the time that they are being followed online. 83% of those who were of the respondents said that they experienced mass surveillance by state or authority. But what I want to say is what is really also something that we stopped at, and this led us later to work on a toolkit on cybersecurity and feminist internet to be used later for trainings for the women human rights defenders, is that the majority of them said that cybersecurity is a complicated issue. And because there is also this concept and belief, as in many other domains, as in environment, economy, politics, etc., that technology is also a man's business, and so it is complicated and hard for us to understand. And that's why we believe that a lot of work has to be done, because also a big number of them reported that their first action to online violence was that they quit the online platforms. You know, so many of them left this platform. They left. They missed their opportunity to be present there. They missed the benefits of this platform in a way or another. And also by quitting, we as women human rights defenders, we are also increasing the probability of maybe this space to be like more dominated by hate, by sexism, by this yeah.
Yes. So as a person who left Twitter because of these attacks, actually, because I talked about ecofeminism on a BBC Persian, I would say that these, I mean, I have not only survived it myself, but I'm also working with people, with women, with other marginalized groups of people from ethnicity, from different, talking about different languages, etc. How to keep this spaces safe. I would say these attacks or this violence, violence are real. It's not because it's online that it doesn't do anything to you. People are experiencing trauma when it happens online. So it's not because you're spending this many hours online or not that you can be more or less traumatized. These are real effects, and only now people are seeing that from the healthcare point of view. They're seeing that how much it can actually affect you. One point was that it is traumatizing. As you just said, people are removing themselves from the spaces. It comes with depression and also isolation, etc. And also, we should not forget that there are so many people who are not on a platform or not on internet, but their data and their identity is already on internet, having had all this sort of violences attacking them, and those people in real life, like not online life, they're still literally suffering from those basic violences and defamation, etc. So this is what I always say as someone who is the bridge between the tech guys, because yes, internet was created by men, and we know where it was created, and it was created for men and cis hetero men basically, and now we're claiming this space, which as humans, we need this, and we have the right to. This brought me to be a bridge between the techie people and the communities who are basically suffering or put to suffer from a sort of digital divide in whatever level it is. And I always say to my fellow feminist activists, as soon as you feel like you want to tweet something controversial or you want to post a picture which is not in the norms that you will be respected, just make sure that your digital security is updated. Just make sure that you have the two-factor authentication, etc. So this is real, and it cannot just be forgotten what's happening. People have also lost their lives. Either they have taken their own lives, sorry for the trigger, or they have been targeted because of what has happened online, and not in Iran or Afghanistan. It has happened in France, it has happened in other countries.
Thank you. I want to add about the challenges, that's the reality and the ground. That the first challenges especially for women and girls generally, and for women's human rights defenders, LGBTQ peoples, and also religious minority groups inside of Afghanistan. The first is the lack of accessibility and limited resources, because women in Afghanistan has no economic independency, and also they can they are not capable to afford the cost of internet, to have the digital devices or internet on digital equipment. So it is a big challenge for the women, and especially women's human rights activists in Afghanistan. And also the other things is the challenges threat to physical safety and security for them and for their family. There is a lot of challenge that women's human rights defenders and LGBTQ persons, they are facing when they are active and online. They are facing so many threats, harassment, and also they make some fake profile to damage their credibility as an advocate, and also sometimes it's transferred to their real lives, these traits, and it is a very danger for them. The other things in Afghanistan and also I'm sure in Iran and other most of countries, the legal and judicial barriers. In Afghanistan, women's human rights, if they are active in online and they are talking about the human rights and women's rights, especially LGBTQ person and also religious minorities, that our some laws and policy don't permit them to talk about these things, to express their opinion about this and advocate for these rights. So because of that, it is a big challenge for them. And as a result, they're facing threats by the government, the government arresting them and torture, punish them. So it is a big challenge. The other things is lack of freedom and support. Women around the world, especially in our countries, don't have freedom, personal freedom. Sometimes they are at the home, they are because of the patriarchal customs and also the religious and the culture prejudice. They are not permit them to be online, to express their opinion, to advocate for their rights and other rights. They don't have permit to have their own social media page by their own name. So they as a result they will be remain with low profile or anonymous their social media pages and activities. And the other things is it is the very important challenge is lack of knowledge and digital literacy. That it is not the opportunity is not provided for women and girls equally. Because of that, they don't have this as much as needed, the literacy and knowledge and skills of using the digital tools. Because of that, they're facing so many threats and it is danger for their safety and security. The very unexpected experience that we have right now from social media, they are using in Afghanistan for divisiveness and ethno-sectarianism to fuel the war and conflict in the country. Recently, the human rights from Afghanistan, they are launched a campaign that banned Taliban from Twitter. It is because that Taliban recruit their fighters by this online being, and also they are encouraging violence and they are spreading hate by using these digital tools. So these all are the challenges of the online being and digital tools that it should be solved and should be recognized as a crime.
I want to add something.
Yes.
Because you reminded me of these threats. When we speak, it's not only related to how cultural norms ban girls from being present online. I just remembered when you were speaking that 3 years ago, a girl was killed in Jordan because her brother discovered that she opened a Facebook account. And 2 years ago, we had this application which was called Abshir in Saudi Arabia, which was used by men to track women's activities. So even there are some tools at Pegasus. We can remember how the authorities and governments used Pegasus to also make surveillance on women human rights defenders and other activists. So I believe that one of the threats is also related that how these governments and this patriarchal system is systematically using the internet to exert even more, if I can say, barriers and restrictions on women and girls. So I wanted to highlight this.
Yeah, thank you. And also I wanted to say, sorry, that by using of digital tools, the one challenge is that people are tracked and targeted by using of these digital tools. As we experience that in Afghanistan was a girl that she was a victim of the Taliban's violence, and she succeeded to escape from Afghanistan to Pakistan. But by using of these digital tools, they tracked her and they just arrested her and brought back to Afghanistan. And right now she is in Taliban custody, and her name is Elahat Alawardi. Maybe you have seen in the social media pages. So it's a big challenge as well that we are faced by using of digital tools.
Great. And Nora, I think Hayat's last comment is a great segue into your research background. And when we met before to just talk about this session today, you said you want to talk about the dark side of the discussion, which is this billions-dollar industry for incentives for spyware, stalkerware that governments are buying from Western corporations. And you have a lot of experience and research background on this with Pegasus and NSO. So I think it would be wonderful to hear from you. We're getting a really good perspective on the individual risks of people being online. And maybe you could bring in that sort of higher perspective from the governments and the tools that they use that Mashal, John, and Hayat were speaking about. And also, if you have anything else to add to any of the other comments, please feel free.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much, Hayat, for opening the floor for my contribution. Unfortunately, I really like to be supporting the whole, but we need also to talk about the dark side of the internet and technology. And so there's a lot of talks about the mass surveillance that the authoritarians are practicing, whether the internet shut down or the filtering, other censorship, and other sorts of mass surveillance. However, we need also to shed light on the targeted surveillance, which is basically when there is a group of people or a given activist themselves, we become designated as enemies of the state, so the authoritarian regimes would be able to, unfortunately, this sophisticated digital technology mostly being sold to these authoritarian regimes by Western based or liberal democracies based countries, and these corporates are operating in a human rights free zone without any sense of accountability and or justice and transparency for sure. So let's say over the last 15 years, this new phenomenon of cyber espionage has been expanding from hacking for higher private sector companies that play a vital role in deploying and supplying sophisticated cyber espionage capacities to for sure democratic and non-democratic countries, state and non-state actors. Such tools are being used to monitor, intimidate, and silence human rights defenders. As you mentioned, also there are some few companies that are being on the radar of civil society and researchers and human rights defenders groups and organizations, such as Gamma Group, Beneficiar, Hacking Team, Candero, NSO, Cytrex, and others. However, when we talk about these, unfortunately, the painful reality that these are only the actors that's being discovered by researchers and civil society organizations. No one knows about the actors who are still acting in the darkness. No one knows about them. And yeah, as I mentioned, what's really giving them the shield and encouraging them to keep conducting this kind of dirty business is the lack of transparency and the lack of accountability and justice. When we talk about why transparency is important, because in many countries, whether in the EU or North America, for instance, there's no enough transparency about the import-export rules and regulations. There is no we all like keep referring to the UN guideline on human rights and business, but there's no enforcement. There's no like real enforcement for these for this beautiful guideline. So like beautiful, but in as a theory, but in practice, it's not enforced yet. There's no practical steps to say that to prevent the such dirty trade. And when we talk, unfortunately, when we talk about who are the targets, absolutely right, the targets are in many contexts, and in particular, in authoritarian contexts, are the human rights defenders, female activists, journalists, and civil society activists in general. When we like, as my colleagues just mentioned, that it's very important to address the vulnerability of women and LGBTQ people in the global south in particular, because when these targetings happen, first of all, it triggers the social taboos in these communities. So the person wouldn't be only being targeted by the state or state-related actors only, but they will be also prevented from having this solidarity in the community, from taking access or taking at least what they deserve from the community and social networks around them in terms of solidarity, support, and like I'm just saying, in comparison to the male activists, unfortunately, when we have, like, I have as examples, when we report about a male activist who was being targeted, you feel like there is a very clear sense of solidarity and support. Whereas when the target is a female or a woman or an LGBT person, you feel like not that much, because not only the regime would be targeting them, but also the community. It could be their family, it could be their colleagues, their neighbors. So no one knows the source of targeting and the threat afterwards. And we should keep emphasizing on the reality that we cannot separate like the online targeting from the offline targeting. And here I will just repeat that, because it's not only, these targeting are not only happening when the activists are in the home country. It's very important to acknowledge and to address the targeting of activists in exile, because the stereotype that when someone crosses the borders through the authoritarian ruled state and seek refuge in exile, or like in many times in liberal democratic state, this assumption that these people are safe, but the reality that these people are not safe for many reasons, including this kind of ignorance that these people will then be targeted. It's okay, something happening online, but in practice, as like many of the scholars have been reporting about that, including Freedom House, for instance, other brilliant scholars who studied the digital transnational repression and draw the connection between the online and offline attacks in exile targeting the activists. And for sure, like including our team at this lab, we released our first report a year ago about the targeting of digital transnational repression targeting the activists in Canada, and also we draw the line on like between the digital targeting and the physical targeting, and how much these digital threats are impacting the day-to-day life. It's not only about like they have their accounts hacked or their devices have been compromised, but also we need also to keep in mind that it has severe and huge impact on their lives, starting from the mental health to the health and well-being, their ability to take care of their families, to their ability to integrate in the new community, because, you know, for newcomers, for people who recently left their country of origin, they are more vulnerable. When the source of targeting is from their country of origin, state or state-related actors, that means without like having this, like any bad or negative feelings towards the people from their country of origin. But it's very normal. They will start questioning every single person from their country and ask themselves, as many of the participants in our research told us, like, I'm limiting the people I'm meeting just because I don't, and I want to reduce the risk. I start questioning every single person from the community in Canada. Are they spies? Are they regime allies or not? And this is very risky because for people who recently moved to a country, they rely on all of these social networks of support from their country of origin. Many of them might not speak the language, but have a network to rely on, whether to have like to get access to housing, to work, and also it's very important to keep in mind that ultimately this have like very severe and huge impact on democracy and activism, because these activists in Israel are entitled to, if they are free, if they are safe, are entitled to keep praying and keep like working on the issues of their country of origins, collaborating with their people back home. So like the targeting of one single person, it's not only targeting of them. We need to keep in mind also the risk of exposing the network of people back home, of activists who are working undercover, collaborating with them, the victims that they document their cases. So it's not only a target of one person, it's a target of all of these people and networks of activists at the home country. And like also there's a lot of other means of transnational repression that might be triggered. And here I just want to shed briefly on the responsibility of the host states and host countries. It's not only about like the responsibilities of the states where the companies of digital surveillance technology are being based, but also the responsibility of states who are hosting these immigrant communities to protect and to act to prevent these attacks, and also to help victims and communities to seek accountability and justice.
Great, thank you so much, Nora, for taking us through that. And each of you are just bringing up all these points that we really need to discuss and talk about. And one of them is the tendency towards treating the online spaces and the physical spaces separately, and not doing enough work to bridge those or treat them as the same experience. So that is coming up in our discussion on well-being. We are going to talk about well-being and security and exactly some of the points you have all been mentioning, but we'll go in more depth in that. Before we get there, I did want to talk about, Nora, you're talking about when states are feeling challenged and threatened and they target human rights defenders. And also when we're talking about opportunities when it comes to being online there, and you were mentioning connection and access, and you're saying the movement cannot exist. You can't talk about the movement without it being online. So one of the things that also came up in our earlier discussions are these cross-border movements as an opportunity that exists for being online and having these digital tools and spaces. And I'd love to hear from each of you about your experiences from these cross-border movements, when you get these big solidarity movements, and what it means to you and the grassroots communities and activists in your countries, when other feminist and LGBTIQ activists are standing in solidarity with you in a region and globally. You know, we also are all witnessing Gina Masa Amini's Women Life Freedom movement, and we talked about that, how that became a global movement. So it'd be wonderful to hear from each of you about the opportunities that come with these cross-border movements, but also maybe the side of when the global movements start to co-opt your own grassroots narratives and agendas, and how these misperceptions on a global scale are impacting you on a local level. So maybe you want to start, Sudha, or Hayat?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll come back later to this. On this note, just what Nora was just explaining us, and also bringing us to that cross borders movements and solidarity. I think one thing is worth to mention, and that is the barrier that it is created or rather recreated online of language. So when we're talking about the social media and that you can report easily something like Twitter, and you can also remove Taliban from Twitter, we still cannot remove the dictator sitting in Iran, Ali Khamenei, from Twitter. Apparently, some other person is coming back to Twitter, etc., etc. I don't want to go there, just having that in mind. When it comes to the gender-based violence online, especially in social media spaces, we really have a hard time to convince the other person or other bot, which is sitting on the other side of the social media, to convince them that this is actually attacking. So in my case, I had this absolutely organized attack coming from everywhere, and it was obviously, as being a good student of social media, just reporting them, and the reports were coming back to me in Arabic. That means the bot or the person on the other side was not even reading what I was saying. Was not even reading, oh, this word is homophobic, or this word is this. I need this tweet to be out. They were just reporting back something like in Arabic. And that brings me actually to the sad reality of us being, again, experiencing another colonization of technology as well. We are living in that era right now, at least. They're creating the tools and the rules and the norms and everything, and they're just trying to reclaim or claim rather the spaces that we have the right to. When it comes to the cross-border solidarity movement, I love this word, MENA region, which is Middle East, North Africa, and that is basically a very white-centered, like West-centered understanding of that region that we're talking about, which is Southeast Asia and North Africa. I know we only talk about most of the time about the Arabic-speaking countries. So we say MENA except Iran because they speak Persian. So in the conversations, like I see Hayat, and like we definitely have had to meet before this, and we have had already, but we cannot remember because these spaces are so segregated. What is happening in, and it's not only because of the language; it's because of the foreign policies of I don't know, of the countries that have these foreign policies, that putting like Iran in another case and Afghanistan in another case, and then it's also about the culture that we're suffering from. That I should say, Iranians are super racist against Arab community, Arabic-speaking people, and also Afghan people, and that exists. Unfortunately, this brings so much shame, but it's there. And it's also about the funders, what they want to see. So they just take away. They say MENA region, but then there is a kind of open and closed Arabic speaking. So everything is there to separate us, like these two from you, and everything is there to separate us from each other. So this is why we tend to see whales being recreated in each of these regions. What you just said, the manual of feminists for feminists, the digital security manual for feminists, I have created this in Persian, and I have created this. It's not I have localized this. And I have created a whole platform for queer people talking about their queer digital security. And I could not find my fellow activists in other Arabic countries speaking, so they could actually localize it or just use it. I have created this beautiful application that I'm really proud of. It's called Hamdam, and Hamdam is fellow, right? It's about the sexual rights and basically the rights of any woman inside the country of Iran. So it's very specific, and it's because it's right to left, and it's totally new in Android applications and has a new calendar. We had to actually create it. It was not like we can just translate crew or any other self-centered, I don't know, white, cis, woman-centered body biology and to translate it into Persian. But I could not find anyone to take it from me among my Afghan friends. One, because it's not the priority, and two, because I don't know the right person. And then it turns us to be really islands here and there, and not really being communicating with each other, and always being surprised that, wow, yeah, this is happening. And always thinking, of course, this is activist mentality. They are getting a better job than we are. You know, like this is otherwise, I think I'm very much in that mentality. Oh, this person is doing much better, so I should do that as well. So this is the cross-border where I want to talk about the Sana, the so-called MENA region. There's this huge gap between these borders, and borders are becoming real, not only offline, but also very, very much online. And that's it. That is such a pity because the state holders, I would say, the regime holders are very friends with each other, and they're just our very common enemy. When I go beyond, and you just mentioned the Jina Masamini revolution, or however you want to call it, I'm not a sociologist, I don't want to go there. What we realize is that solidarity is not only about my name is Mahsa Amini or what is happening in Iran, it's atrocity, etc. But it is actually about seeing what is happening in our very own society. What's happening in the US? Oh, the right of abortion is just endangered and just taken away. So this is also part of that progressive revolution. And then we see that in this revolution or these rallies, there are also a lot of LGBTQIA plus flags there in Iran or outside of Iran, both sides. And that is like people are putting their lives in danger online and offline to say we exist. And this is not about compulsory hijab anymore. This is about we do not want any ideology to reign us. No Taliban from Tehran to Kabul or something like that is the slogan that they say. And then Taliban arrives into US with the rights to abort, etc., etc. And I see that among my feminist colleagues or friends in France, that they're just so much in awe that someone or a movement in global south, and that in Iran, where is the compulsory hijab, is coming out with this progressive slogans and acts that they just lose their, I don't know, superiority, and they fail in solidarity, even to come to the rallies, let alone understanding what is happening in this world. So all of us are individuals, and we're definitely infected by the whole idea of freedom and, oh, global south, always poor, it's third country because we are so developed, human rights comes from the West, etc., etc. So these tools are always there. We have been born, and we are born into these communities, and as soon as we can, as far as we cannot just really go naked in front of the mirror and see what is affected us, we cannot really cure this. I love this autoimmune disease, and I have 2 autoimmunes, and I totally feel like we're all affected by this autoimmune disease. We are killing ourselves, first of all.
Yes, you spoke about the point of language. And it was on my mind, and I totally agree with whatever Suda said. I think that language is an issue, and also it's not only related if you speak Arabic or not. There are also different dialectics among the Arab countries. And after all, within the Arab countries, there are people who don't identify as Arabs, and also they are excluded from such discussions in a way or another. So I don't want to repeat the point of the language. I want to say that I believe that cross-border activism or solidarity or networking helps in the first place to keep this cause alive. What I've seen in the case of the revolution in Iran and all what's going on, what we try to do is that we try to expand or amplify the voices of these Iranian women on grounds, to tell our communities about the stories that traditional media usually hide, and because the online space is full of the other story, the story of the authority, the story of the regimes, which also risks maybe the people who are on ground, their main narrative in a way or another. So this activism supports in making these stories alive, these voices alive in the first place. Also, it helps create a momentum in a way or another. And I can say that this happened, for example, in the Arab Spring also. We are recalling this example because this happened, for example, in one of the campaigns, which is Me Too movement, which was a global movement, and its impact mainly in our region, how we say it, its impact on exposing more harassers online, and how this online exposure was taken to the offline activism. So in different occasions, it might also support us in building the momentum around causes and transforming this online networking or dialogue into an offline work and activism. And for me, one of also the most important aims of cross-border movement building or networking is related to learning from each other. You know, what are the tools, what are the tactics, how is the context, and why did this tool work in this context, and applying this to our context and analyzing will it work or will it not, you know. So learning from these activism in different countries is also important. But yes, I totally admit that it is not something that easy, especially in our region, because unfortunately our region is full of crises all the time. Wars, recently the earthquake, Beirut blast. So all the time we are responding to these crises. So I feel that also at certain periods we were unable to do this type of really activism, networking for activism online, but more we were using, at least in the past after COVID and in the past years, these tools in order maybe to just take support, express solidarity, and try to respond to the crisis in a way or another.
With agreement with the points that my friends mentioned, I can say that and during these almost 2 years, the women inside of Afghanistan, because of the insecurity and their safety, they raised their voice, but they arrested by Taliban and they tortured by Taliban, they are imprisoned by Taliban. So because of that, I think we succeed to manage and organize this advocacy movement under the name of education, work, and freedom, because the Taliban banned the working women and also the education for women, and they risk from all social stress. So this helped to we have a very high voice and around the world, and it affected the decision of the government and international community that as a result during these about 18 months any government doesn't recognize Taliban's government officially. And however, there is no any practical action regarding Afghanistan, but it affected for the creating international solidarity for the supporting women's and human rights inside of Afghanistan. So I think that, and also these other hashtag by the name of Let's Afghan Girls Learn. It reached a lot of people around the world, and also right now the politician persons also follows and use this hashtag, and they are supporting women's education rights and basic rights inside of Afghanistan. And it is an impact of the cross-border activism and advocacy.
Thank you. Nura, would you like to add anything to this? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I can't agree more with every single word my colleagues have said. And honestly, like, it's not because my academic background is in global affairs, but truly, like, just thinking, I was just recalling while you were speaking, I was recalling a very important lesson I learned from a colleague and an inspiring scholar from his book, Making the World Safe for Dictators, for Dictatorship, is just thinking about the amount of resources that the dictators and authoritarian regimes are deploying for manipulating the international narratives towards what's happening in their countries. The PR companies, the lobbyists, and all of these. Now we have the new socioeconomic models of social media influencers, social media companies, and all of these so-called media outlets that amplify the voices and the narrative of these authoritarian regimes. Versus, we don't have the same money, we don't have the same resources, we don't have the same power as civil society and global citizens, but what we do have is solidarity. I would like to say that solidarity is our only and effective weapon to counter and to stand to these dictators, injustice, patriarchy, and all of these means and norms of repression and targeting of the women and citizens and LGBTQ activists and individuals in these countries, where like it's not only about lack of spaces to freedom, but it's about like threatening their own lives, safety, and even this very essential rights. So thinking about this, I really believe like it's very, very important to keep this solidarity. It's very important even to expand these networks of solidarity and advocacy. And what I really feel inspired is thinking of how we can build this global solidarity movement. It's not only about like, and you know, I feel like we need, and it's very important to shift even the mindset from mobilizing when there is one single event happening, and we can even mobilize people to be angry, to show solidarity, support, towards organizing. We can move to work and towards more strategic working, towards organizing more global solidarity movements to support and to amplify the voices of these grassroots organizations and activists in these countries and globally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nora, and everyone. Can I just turn the segue into the conversation on care? Because she's mentioning solidarity. And each of you in earlier discussions have identified solidarity as a main form of collective care. So going into the conversation on care and well-being, I think that's wonderful that you're mentioning that, Nora, so we can just go right into that. And then I think that has to be our final question, and we have to open the Q&A from online and the group. And so I just wanted to mention that. So I really believe that each and every one of you are, what you're doing for women and LGBTIQ is also a form of collective care. And that activists and human rights defenders like you have been advancing and even bringing the idea, the concept of care into the community, the international community in the world. That is something that women and LGBTIQ activists are personally responsible for. There's no one else that can take credit for that. We're even having discussions about care now. And so solidarity, each of you have mentioned, and I just wanted to hear from each of you when we talk about bridging the gap between online and offline self and collective care. What does that look like for each of you? And Sudha, you have some.
Yes, sure. I actually want to comment on solidarity, but I will continue with the care. So the question that I ask myself literally almost every week at least once is, what is solidarity? What is it really? Is it a hashtag? Is it like just being, oh yeah, I know what's happening in Afghanistan? And I always remember this beautiful sentence that one of the friends of Simone de Beauvoir mentioned to me some 15 years ago. She told me, you know what, Sudha, solidarity is not just standing here, it's to make my fight your fight. And that always is with me. If I really truly understand that I am not going to be free to follow my education until every single human being on this world can have access to free and equal education. I am not free, then I make this fight my fight. And of course, I cannot fight in every single place. I have to pick my fights. And that brings me to this world that we are living in, which is full of trauma. Everybody is traumatized, and everybody has some sort of trauma in their lives, individual or collective. And most of the time, individual traumas are caused by some sort of collective thought or collective behavior. So we're not here to blame one person or one thing, other than patriarchy and capitalism, of course. But this has brought me to this idea of trauma-informed activism. I cannot tell you much more about it because I'm really in the beginning of creating it maybe, but this is a realization I had when I at one of my sessions when we were talking about digital hygiene, and I realized that, oh, we are actually talking about trauma or PTSD, etc. when we talk about this digital security hacks or doxing, etc. All of us are activists and all of us are working with communities or individuals who are traumatized. We are traumatized ourselves because of different reasons. And that means to be able to survive, to be able to change, we have to care. We have to not only care for each other, but we also have to care for ourselves to be able to survive. And that brings us to this, the very important subject of self-care, and to occupy this space of self-care, which is definitely absolutely occupied by white heteronormative ideas. As soon as you go and you say, oh, I'm an immigrant, then your psychotherapist basically does not have any clue, or they just immediately tell you, oh, you were born during the war, so you should have traumas, and then they are definitely comparing you and your life to what all the atrocities happening in Auschwitz, etc. So there is no space out there for an LGBTQIA plus woman or a person of color in all these white countries, let alone in our global south, where self-care is basically just not existing because you have to be strong, etc., etc. That is our movement. And for that, I would just really keep it short because I do understand there is a restriction of time. We started to create an online platform for the LGBTQI plus people from Savannah region who are either inside their countries, in Afghanistan, Iran, or any other country, or who have been dislocated recently. The name is Noor Sara, and I'm pretty sure everybody here knows Sara Hijazi. Sara was a prominent Egyptian lesbian activist, a feminist activist who was arrested because she held the LGBT flag in Mashoulela concert. She was finally, after arrest and etc., she was finally moved. She did move to Canada as an asylum seeker, and only after a year she could not take it anymore, so she took away her own life, leaving us this note that this was too much for me, my dear siblings, I know, etc. So we don't want that happen again. We don't want another brilliant life to just be lost. And in that basically concept, the Neurosara concept, we truly see how this white idea of self-care is there. I don't have money to go to get massage. You don't have to get a massage for self-care. You can just sit, have a cup of tea. You know, and all of us, you look back in indigenous communities, you see how self-care is important and there actually as a way of living. So this is, again, bringing this back, all the activism that we're doing, from ecologist activism, queer activism, feminist activism, and every sort of combination between them for social justice brings us back to this importance of self-care in different aspects. Sorry, I told you I would be short, but it was really.
I will be very short. In addition to all what was mentioned, I believe that we have no other alternative, you know. Because we as activists, as people who are not confronting with the regime, with the cultural norms, etc., we don't have the support system, you know. We are pushed out of our spaces, sometimes of our families, of our friends, because of all the backlash and the anti-rights movement we are facing. So there is no one who will come and provide us this care, or even care if we are taking this care or not. So that's why I believe that it is a duty to prioritize this, because we are speaking about a movement, and if we want to sustain this movement, we have to be aware that this movement is sustained by individuals, by humans, you know. So and we experience a lot of burnout in the work that we do every day because of the struggles, because of everything we face, because we are in direct contact daily with the people who are the most oppressed and marginalized. And so we see injustices, and we are very sensitive about these injustices. So I think if we didn't take this into a priority, this will affect the movement, and we are responsible for this movement. Also, the final thing that I want to stress is that The community always, or the system always emphasize that everything we experience is a personal thing, you know? When we speak about violence against women, they say this is personal. When we speak about SRHR, they say personal. So it's important to demand that this is not personal, this is political, and the well-being of the movement and the care within this movement, it is a political issue, and it's not personal at all. So that's why we focus on collective care rather than individual care.
I want to say that we experienced that it is during hundreds of years that we are struggling together for gender equality and women's rights, and minority rights, and all over the world. And as all of us, we come from different countries, but we have common problem and challenges in front of us. I think it is a new chapter of the digital age is a new chapter for our struggle. So there is only thing that we could bring change. We should change our advocacy strategy, become more united, and at least with using of these digital tools and opportunity, we can bring together all women's human rights defenders and also minority groups and who are seeking justice for their rights and other rights. We should use this platform as a big opportunity to make a big unity among us to bring a change around the world. Otherwise, we will right now, we will spend hundreds other years to meet the gender equality or to fight for a better future for everyone. I'm sure that right now it is so many years that we are talking, we are running, we are shopping, but there is no any practical change around the world. And instead of the change, we face another challenges. That is, the online digital, online space as well. So we need a unity. We should go together. We should amplify each other voices, and also we should support each other's advocacy initiatives.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michelle. Nora, your final contribution, please.
Yeah, honestly, I really agree with everything my colleagues said, but I just want to re-emphasize on the importance of like applying the approach of trauma-informed approach, whether like in activism, in documentation, online and offline. And like I would really love to conclude with one of my very best friends say. She told me that while we were together in the cell in prison, she said, "We will never be good until we are all good." Thank you very much.
Yeah. I feel like I don't want to say anything after all these beautiful closing statements each of you said. But I will say that since we don't have time for Q&A, I think if anyone has questions, feel free to track anyone down that you have a question for afterwards, and I'm sure you'll have time to give them. And then just thank each of you so much for this incredible conversation. It's a big topic to unpack, and you guys did such a beautiful job taking us across such a spectrum. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Suzette.
Thank you.